What's going on, y'all? It's me, Jess, and I am back again with another video. So if you've been watching my series for the past couple of episodes, you've been watching me talk about my journey of me losing 200 pounds, what those experiences have been like, such as like in my present life, childhood, some of the things that I've been dealing with, such as loose skin, and just like my overall experiences. I feel like this is kind of like, I would say maybe a diary, but maybe not. But I also feel like there are other people who have gone through this process, currently in this process, who could also relate to some of the things that I have been through, experience, and some of the things that I am talking about. So if you continue to keep watching this series, I want some more detail as far as like meal plans, what I eat, workouts, you know, everything that kind of went into this journey. And a lot of people think that my journey started overnight or that I just lost 200 pounds like that. But y'all, I've been on a weight loss journey since 2012. Okay. So it is 2026. I've had ebbs and flows, ups and downs, but I finally reached the spot where like I know what I'm doing. And I've been on like this, you know, momentum of keeping up my weight loss and ultimately trying to reach my dream body. So, some of the things that I want to talk about, and I do have my handy dandy iPad because I do want to make sure that I'm touching on all of the topics because I be having so many different thoughts, and hopefully, y'all have been following me throughout this whole process. But this is kind of where I'm at with this. So, I want to start off by saying some of the things that I missed out on with being overweight and obese majority of my life. And this isn't something that I would recommend that people, you know, do or, you know, if they are in a place where they are overweight or obese, I definitely would recommend that you do find ways to get the weight off so that you can start living your life. I missed out on a whole lot of things because I was overweight. And now that I'm a lot smaller and my experiences are different, now I can look back on some of my past experiences and be like, dang, like I probably would have had way different experiences or I could have experienced a lot more, but I did not because of my weight. And that's not to say everything was completely terrible, but looking back, yeah, there's some things that I wish I didn't have to wait till experience. So the first one, I'll just say dating, y'all. You know, growing up the fat girl, it's interesting because like people would like you, and I always feel like people liked bigger people, but people liked me, but sometimes people would be ashamed that they liked me, right? Because nobody wanted to like the fat girl, nobody wanted to be attached to the big girl. So that came with a lot of shame for not only the people who might have been interested in me, but also for myself, because it almost makes you feel like, dang, am I not, you know, well enough to date? You know what I mean? Is my weight truly a big enough factor for someone to not take me seriously? And at the time, I would probably say, "Oh, that's messed up." But like hindsight is 2020, right? And I could honestly say, as terrible as this is going to sound, I could see why people have preferences in the size of their partners. I completely get it now. So back then, my thought process was probably a little bit more jaded, but now I have a better understanding as to why people would desire a partner who is maybe physically fit or smaller or who is not overweight or obese, right? So I get it. So as it relates to dating, not only did I deal with that, but I was also a late bloomer, right? So don't get me wrong, y'all. I've always been cute, okay? And it hasn't been a problem getting men to be, I guess, quote unquote, attracted to me per se. However, I will say this, growing up, I wasn't really in any relationships. I didn't really have boyfriends and things like that because nobody wanted to date the big girl. Now, I really started dating for real probably when I reached like my freshman and sophomore year in college. That is when like I started experiencing like, I guess, relationships and what boyfriends would look like and just certain things that I just had not experienced my whole life. So I didn't really grow up with people having too many crushes on me or people really liking me or having a childhood, you know, boyfriend or anything like that because people just really didn't want to be tied to that. And it's so interesting because, and he probably doesn't even remember he told me this, but I was in college and it was this guy and we had a conversation. I'm trying to remember. Anyway, I asked him, I said, if my weight wasn't what it was, would you, genuinely consider me as an option? And he said, yeah. Yeah, I probably would look at you a lot differently if you didn't carry the weight that you did. And sometimes we don't see ourselves as big. Like back then, I didn't see myself the way that I see myself now. Because if you show me a picture now of what I look like 200 pounds heavy, I'll probably be like, damn, damn. Okay, well, hefty. You know what I'm saying? So I do feel like being that size, not only did it cause me to be a late bloomer, but I didn't really have a whole heck of a lot of experience or relationship experience. Well, shit, you at that age, maybe not. But you know what I mean? I would see all of the other girls and kids in high school and middle school, they would have boyfriends and be in relationships. And I was just kind of one of those people who just did not have that. I did it. But now, and I'll go into like future, right? So when I was bigger and going into dating, I just don't want to make this a complete dating video because I will go into dating in a completely separate video, but I will say this, right? When I was bigger, the caliber of men that I have access to or had access to is completely different than the caliber of men that I have now. And also too, I felt like people approached me more when I was bigger as opposed to now. And I have my theories for that. And I also kind of feel like, did people see me as easy kill because I was bigger? You know what I'm saying? I don't know, but we're going to flesh that out in another video. But I will say, like, dating is one of the things that I feel like I missed out on as a result of being overweight. Photos. I did not like taking photos. I didn't want to be in photos. If you notice with a lot of bigger people and they have a transformation, they typically have like 5 photos in rotation of their befores, right? Because typically when you are that size, you don't really like being in photos. You don't like seeing yourself in photos. So that's something you tend to stay away from. And I can say for me, that was something that I stayed away from because I just didn't like being in photos. I always felt like I was like super big, awkward, and I just didn't like how I felt. And I'll also be honest in this regard, right? I also kind of felt not ashamed of my body, but I knew I was bigger. And this kind of coincides with the whole bigger woman taking photos from the neck up, right? Because they'll be in a photo like this. And you couldn't see their whole body, right? So I myself was guilty of that, but there are telltale signs, right? And then my face was also a lot fuller, right? So I don't know who I was fooling, but yeah, y'all, that was also a thing. I stayed away from photos. I didn't take a whole lot of photos, and I had a lot of experiences that I wish I would have captured photos in, but I just didn't because my weight was a factor in that. I will say another thing that I feel like I missed out on as a result of being overweight and big is being able to experience life, right? So being too big for amusement park rides, right? If I wanted to do something, like one time I wanted to go, was it Sky Zone? But at the time there was like a weight limit for that, right? So like having to take into consideration what I can be eligible for before trying to do an event or do something, it is very disheartening because you feel like, dang, like I really want that experience, but I can't do it because of my weight. So I do feel like I missed out on a lot of lived experiences because of my size. Next is my confidence, right? So I'll say this, okay? Weight is not synonymous with self-esteem. There's this misconception that just because you are big or obese, that you have low self-esteem, right? And for me, I did not have low self-esteem. However, I was very uncomfortable in the body that I was in. And because I was uncomfortable in the body that I was in, I would wear a whole lot of layers of clothing. I would try to conceal it, hide it. I would try to do certain things because I did not like the body I was in. I was uncomfortable, sweaty, hot, just like who wears 2 jackets in the middle of summertime because you don't want people to see you big whole time they still can see that you big. Was still big and hot, boiling like a hot dog in them jackets. But some of the things that I did because I wasn't comfortable with my size and my weight, now that I think about it, is mind-boggling that I used to do these things, right? But these are coping mechanisms that you tend to have when you are of a bigger size, right? So I do feel like to some extent I didn't have low self-esteem, but sometimes my confidence would be shot in other areas because I would want to wear certain things. I would want to do certain things. And I can remember back to my childhood. It take me and my mama to talk about this, but back in the day when the girls would like tie their shirts up and show their belly, and like I seen all the girls doing that. And it take my mama to talk about this to this day. But I guess she said I came home one day and I had my shirt tied up like that. And y'all, my job always been a big kid. And when she said she saw me, she said, "Baby, you can't do that. You can't do what everybody else do." And there's opposing views for either side, right? But that's one thing I do appreciate about my mama. Even though I was big, she made sure I had me a girl, okay, that I wasn't all loosey goosey. She made sure that she signed me up for weight loss programs. Like, she did what she needed to do to make sure that, like, okay, my baby is big, but we ain't finna have her out here looking sloppy. We not finna have her doing X, Y, and Z. And I love you for that, Ma. Sometimes I wouldn't go to certain events, like clubs and bars, because I felt like, and I've been the big girl in the group, right, where everybody else is getting hit on, but like, yeah, I'm cute, but like, I'm big, right? So sometimes people can't see outside of that, right? They just see that you big. And I would, sometimes would avoid those situations because I know that, like, it would create an awkward situation where, like, I'm playing, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm being my homegirls, road dog while they out there talking to, guys and getting attention and romantic attention. And I'm just like, I'm here, right? So I just felt like sometimes that men would be ashamed to approach me or wouldn't approach me. And every now and again, you would have that one or two, man or men who was like, I don't care, baby, what you look like. Whether you a house, whether you a car, or whether, they didn't care what size you was. They still was going to be interested, right? So I did have those happen occasionally, but, these are some of the things that I missed out on in life, right? So next, I want to talk about how this turned into people treating me differently. And I definitely want to expound on this in another video because I do feel like people treat me way differently now. And sometimes I get sad about it, right? Because not only do I have pretty privilege, but now I can compete because I'm, quote unquote, the size that you need to be to compete, right? So sometimes people do treat me very differently. I'll start by saying my attention from men is a lot different, right? When I was bigger, sometimes, people just wanted to hang out, chill, didn't really want to do too much. But like when you look a certain way, when you're smaller, like they want you to be their arm candy. They want you to just, be seen with them everywhere. They want to show you off, right? So that's something that I have noticed in regards to people treating me differently. I will say though, which is kind of bizarre, and I can be transparent, I received way more attention when I was 3. Well, I won't say way more, but I did kind of receive more attention when I was bigger as opposed to the size that I am now. And I have my theory for that, right? Perceivably so, I was more attainable, right? Because I was big and I'm just, quote unquote, happy to just have somebody, right? So this is my theory on it. I feel like now circumstances have changed. So sometimes a man might not be as inclined to be or show as much interest than they did before, now that I'm smaller, because the whole other set of things, right? Another thing that I ran into when people started treating me differently is the respect that I got from people, right? When I was bigger, right? That's not to say people were rude or mean, but it was almost like I was invisible, right? But like now I can come into a room and command all the attention just by walking in. I could be walking down the street and someone can just say, hey, hello, good morning, how you doing? I get way more of those now than I ever did when I was 350, right? People want to be of aid and service. People want to help you. People just respect you. And I will agree, right? That's not to say people who are bigger don't deserve to be respected. But I can say that there's something about a person when you can literally tell the work that they've put in through their body and how that manifests itself through the energy that they bring in a space, right? So I will say, like, now I can command a room and now people just take me seriously. But there's also a downside to that as well, because when you used to being a funny big girl, making everybody laugh just so you can feel like you fit in, now that people take me seriously now, it's different, because like now people don't really give me that energy, right? When I would walk into the room and be the life of the party, because I'm just me and I'm Jess and I'm this and I'm that. But like now when I walk into a room, people almost go like, who she think she is? You know what I mean? And don't let me be did up, you know, face beat, body, yaddy, yaddy, and like the whole vibe is just differently. And this is something that like I get sad about sometimes, but I'll touch more into that in another video. But I feel like that is also something that has kind of transpired throughout my weight loss journey. I don't want to make this too long, so I think I'm gonna cap episode 7 here. But if you followed along this far, I thank you so much. As I continue to talk about my journey, we're going to wrap up season 1 soon. And then season 2, we're going to get into a whole slew of different things. And I have so many different ideas, but just y'all stay rocking with me. You won't regret it. And yeah, bye.